Hello everyone. Before starting the video, if you are new here, please support and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Let's start. Imagine dedicating your entire life to seeking truth, only to realize that everything you once held dear was ultimately meaningless. Picture standing at the pinnacle of success, wealth, and fame, yet feeling as though you're teetering on the edge of a vast, empty abyss. This wasn't just a philosophical dilemma. It was the real-life crisis of one of history's greatest writers and thinkers, Leo Tolstoy. Tolstoy is best known for his masterpieces War and Peace and Anna Karenina, novels that have stood the test of time. But behind his literary genius was a man tormented by an existential crisis so deep that it nearly drove him to take his own life. Despite having everything society tells us should bring happiness, fortune, fame, and a loving family, Tolstoy was consumed by a single, haunting question. What is the meaning of life? Perhaps you've asked yourself this question too. In those quiet moments when distractions fade, do you ever feel that unsettling whisper in the back of your mind? Why am I here? What's the point of all this? If so, you're not alone. The search for meaning is a struggle as old as humanity itself, and few have wrestled with it as intensely as Tolstoy. Today, we will explore the transformation of a man who had everything yet felt lost. We'll trace his journey through philosophy, science, and religion as he desperately sought answers, until he finally found one that not only changed his life, but could change yours as well. And perhaps the most profound revelation of all, that will come at the end, offering a new way to see your own existence. The life of Leo Tolstoy. Born in 1828 into one of Russia's most aristocratic families, Tolstoy's early years were filled with privilege, indulgence, and reckless pursuits. He gambled away fortunes, engaged in numerous affairs, and constantly sought new thrills. Like many intellectuals of his time, he placed his faith in reason, science, and the promise of human progress. Yet despite his relentless pursuit of knowledge, something always felt missing. By his 40s, Tolstoy had cemented his place in history. War and Peace was hailed as a literary masterpiece, capturing the complexities of history and human nature. Anna Karenina followed, a deep exploration of love, morality, and society. The world revered him, but the more he achieved, the more he was haunted by a terrifying realization. Death would erase everything. His books, his fame, even his very existence. One day, all of it would be gone. He wrote in his journal, "Is there any meaning in my life that will not be annihilated by the inevitability of death?" Tolstoy was not alone in his despair. Many of history's greatest minds grappled with the same question. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer saw life as an endless cycle of suffering, where fleeting pleasures only gave way to new desires. Friedrich Nietzsche famously argued that traditional sources of meaning, religion, morality, and culture were illusions that humanity had outgrown. Even modern psychology, despite its advances, has struggled to answer Tolstoy's most pressing question: why live at all? Desperate for answers, Tolstoy turned to philosophy, immersing himself in the works of Plato, Socrates, Kant, and Hegel. Yet instead of clarity, he found contradictions. Every philosophical system offered a different interpretation of existence, but none provided a universal objective meaning. Science, too, failed him. It could explain how the universe worked, but not why it existed. At an impasse, Tolstoy asked himself, if reason and knowledge can't provide meaning, then what can? The wisdom of the ordinary. In his search, Tolstoy turned his attention to an unlikely source: the lives of ordinary people. He noticed something remarkable. Peasants, despite their lack of wealth, education, or influence, did not seem plagued by the same existential torment that haunted intellectuals. They lived with a quiet, unwavering sense of purpose. What did they understand that he did not? As he observed them, he saw a pattern. Their sense of meaning didn't come from logic, scientific theories, or personal ambition. It came from faith, not blind belief, but an innate trust that life was part of something greater. They didn't spend their days questioning existence, because to them, the answer was self-evident. Life had meaning because it was connected to something larger, something sacred. This revelation shook Tolstoy to his core. All his life he had placed his trust in reason, yet reason had led him to despair. Meanwhile, the very people he once overlooked, uneducated peasants, possessed the peace he had been desperately searching for. And in that realization, he found a new path, one that would change him forever. A turning point. This was the turning point in Tolstoy's journey. He began to explore religion, not as a set of rituals, but as a source of deeper truth. He studied Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Islam, trying to uncover the common thread that connected all faiths. What he found was not dogma, not institutions, but a universal truth that had been echoed by sages and prophets for millennia. Here is where Tolstoy's story takes an even more profound turn. The realization he came to, the answer he discovered, was not what most would expect. It was not the religion of the church, nor the philosophy of scholars, nor the conclusions of science. It was something far more fundamental, something that had been hidden in plain sight all along. We are only beginning to uncover the depths of Tolstoy's transformation, and in the next part, we will explore the moment when everything changed, the moment when he finally understood what had been missing all along. Most importantly, we will see how his discovery may hold the key to answering the question that has haunted humanity for centuries. But before we continue, I want you to reflect on this. If everything you believe about life turned out to be an illusion, would you be ready to see the truth? Tolstoy's crisis reached its breaking point when he found himself unable to go on with life as it was. He wrote in his diary that he had lost the ability to live, that every action seemed meaningless, that even the love of his family and the beauty of the world around him could not silence the gnawing question within him. Why does anything matter if death will erase it all? He considered all the possible answers that society offered. He saw that people dealt with the absurdity of life in different ways. Some, like the ignorant masses, simply refused to think about it. Others, like the hedonists, drowned their despair in pleasure, distracting themselves with wealth, love, or entertainment. Then there were those who, like the philosophers, tried to reason their way through life, building complex systems of thought to justify existence. And finally, there were those who, recognizing the meaninglessness of everything, simply ended their lives. Tolstoy saw himself in the last group. He admitted that if he had not been afraid of death, he would have already taken his own life. But there was something inside him that held him back, something deeper than logic, something that whispered that there was still an answer waiting to be found. His search led him to an unexpected realization, one that shook the very foundation of his beliefs. He had spent his entire life looking for meaning in external achievements, in intellectual mastery, in the validation of others. But what if meaning was never meant to be found in the world outside? What if it was something internal, something deeply personal, something that could not be measured or explained by logic alone? For the first time, Tolstoy began to consider the idea that perhaps reason was not the ultimate tool for understanding life. Perhaps the truth he was searching for could not be proven in the way a mathematical equation could be solved, but could only be felt, experienced, and lived. This realization led him back to the wisdom of the peasants, the simple people who lived without questioning the meaning of life, yet possessed a quiet certainty about their place in the world. They were not tormented by the thoughts that consumed him. Why? Because they lived by faith. Faith. This was a word that Tolstoy had long dismissed. As an intellectual, he had seen faith as an outdated concept, a relic of an unenlightened past. He had assumed that belief in something beyond reason was a sign of weakness, a way for people to escape the harsh realities of existence. But now, standing at the edge of despair, he began to see it differently. Faith, he realized, was not about blindly accepting religious doctrine. It was not about believing in fairy tales or supernatural forces. It was something much more essential. Faith was the conviction that life had meaning, even if that meaning could not be fully explained. It was the belief that existence was part of a greater order, a higher purpose, even if the full nature of that purpose remained unknown. This revelation did not come easily to him. He resisted it, fought against it, tried to disprove it. But the more he searched for meaning through logic alone, the more he saw the limitations of reason. Science could describe the mechanics of the universe, but it could not tell him why the universe existed in the first place. Philosophy could analyze the structures of thought, but it could not give him a reason to keep living. In contrast, faith provided something that reason never could, an answer that satisfied the soul. Tolstoy turned to the teachings of Jesus, not as an institutionalized religion, but as a philosophy of life. He was drawn not to the dogma of the church, which he saw as corrupt and self-serving, but to the simple, powerful truths that lay at the heart of Christ's message: love, humility, service, and the idea that life's purpose was not found in personal ambition, but in connection with others. The more he explored this idea, the more he saw it reflected in other traditions as well. The Buddha had taught that suffering came from attachment, that true peace came from surrendering the ego. Hindu philosophy spoke of the illusion of the self, the interconnectedness of all things. The Stoics believed that wisdom came from accepting life as it was, rather than constantly fighting against it. Slowly, Tolstoy began to reconstruct his understanding of life. He let go of the desperate need to explain everything through reason alone and embraced a deeper, more intuitive understanding. He saw that meaning was not something to be found in books, in wealth, or in fame. Meaning was something to be lived. He abandoned his previous way of life. He rejected his aristocratic privileges, renounced his wealth, and sought to live as simply as possible. He dedicated himself to serving others, to practicing kindness, to embracing a life of humility, and for the first time in decades, he felt peace. But here is where we must pause and ask a question. Is faith really the answer? Tolstoy found his meaning through faith, but does that mean the same path will work for everyone? This is where his story takes an even more fascinating turn, because while he believed he had solved the riddle of life, his journey did not end there. In fact, his new understanding led him into even greater conflict, both with the world around him and within himself. In the next part, we will explore the consequences of Tolstoy's transformation, how his newfound beliefs challenged the very foundations of society, how they led to his rejection by the church, and how they even created turmoil within his own family. But perhaps most importantly, we will confront the most difficult question of all. If meaning is something we must create for ourselves, how do we know if we have chosen the right path? Let that question sit with you for a moment, because what comes next may challenge everything you think you know about meaning, purpose, and the very nature of existence itself. Tolstoy's transformation was not just personal. It became a revolution in thought, one that would challenge the very fabric of the world around him. He had found an answer to his own crisis, but that answer came with consequences. Because the moment he embraced a life of faith, simplicity, and moral clarity, he found himself at odds with nearly everything he had once been a part of. The first to feel the weight of his change was his own family. His wife, Sophia, who had stood by him through his years of literary triumph, was devastated by his rejection of wealth and status. For decades, she had managed his estate, supported his career, and helped publish his masterpieces. Now he was turning his back on everything they had built together. He no longer believed in private property, no longer saw value in material success, no longer cared for the aristocratic life that had once defined them. This led to deep conflicts between them. She begged him not to give away their wealth, fearing for the future of their children. She accused him of being irresponsible, of abandoning his duties as a husband and father in pursuit of an impossible ideal. Tolstoy, in turn, saw her resistance as proof of the corruption of society, a world where even love and family could be consumed by greed and attachment to possessions. But his conflict with Sophia was only the beginning. His radical new beliefs soon made him an enemy of the very institution that claimed to uphold faith, the Russian Orthodox Church. Tolstoy believed that the church had betrayed the true teachings of Christ. He saw how religion had been twisted to serve the powerful, how it had become an instrument of oppression rather than liberation. The church preached obedience to the state, supported war, and demanded blind submission, all while accumulating wealth and influence. In Tolstoy's eyes, this was not the message of Jesus. The real essence of Christ's teachings, he argued, was a call to love, to serve others, to reject violence and materialism. He wrote extensively about his criticisms of organized religion, and for this, the church condemned him. In 1901, he was officially excommunicated. This was a public rejection, a declaration that Tolstoy was no longer part of the faith he had embraced so deeply. But instead of breaking him, this rejection only confirmed what he already believed, that truth was not found in institutions, in rituals, or in doctrines, but in the way one lived their life. He continued to preach his ideas, spreading his message through essays, letters, and even direct action. He inspired a movement, groups of followers now known as the Tolstoyans, who sought to live according to his vision. They rejected wealth, refused to participate in violence, and sought to live in harmony with nature and with each other. His writings would go on to influence some of the greatest figures of the 20th century, including Mahatma Gandhi, who credited Tolstoy with shaping his philosophy of nonviolent resistance. But despite all of this, despite having seemingly found the answer to life's greatest question, Tolstoy was not at peace. The battle between his ideals and reality was relentless. The tension in his family never resolved. The world did not embrace his vision the way he had hoped. Even among his followers, contradictions and divisions emerged. And so, in 1910, at the age of 82, Tolstoy did something that shocked everyone. He walked away from everything. One night, without telling his family, he left his home, taking only a few possessions with him. He boarded a train, heading into the unknown. His health was failing, his body weak, but he was driven by an overwhelming need to escape, to live fully by the principles he had come to believe in. It was during this journey that Tolstoy fell gravely ill. Stranded at a remote railway station, he was taken to a small caretaker's home, where he spent his final days. He spent his final moments surrounded by a few close companions, but not his family. His wife arrived only when it was too late, and in that quiet, unassuming place, one of history's greatest minds took his last breath. Tolstoy's death was a moment of reflection for the world. Here was a man who had everything: fame, fortune, influence, yet had willingly abandoned it all in pursuit of a truth beyond material success. Whether or not we agree with his conclusions, one thing is certain: he lived and died relentlessly seeking meaning. But this raises an even deeper question. Did Tolstoy truly find the answer he was searching for? He believed faith gave life meaning, yet he wrestled with doubt until the very end. He rejected the material world, but could never fully detach from it. He longed to transform humanity, yet the world carried on unchanged. So what does this tell us? What can we take from Tolstoy's journey? In this final part of our exploration, we will reflect on the deeper significance of his life. Was he a visionary who glimpsed a truth beyond what others could see? Or was he a man who simply refused to accept life as it is? And more importantly, how can his struggle help you find meaning in your own life? Because the answer Tolstoy arrived at may not be the answer for everyone, and what comes next may just change the way you see everything. The lessons from Tolstoy's search. Tolstoy's lifelong quest for meaning was one of the most profound intellectual and spiritual journeys in history. He confronted life's biggest questions, stripped away illusions, and pursued truth with an intensity few dare to match. Yet even at the end, contradictions remained, paradoxes that make his story even more powerful. So what can we learn from Tolstoy's search? 1. Meaning is not a destination, it's a way of living. Tolstoy never stopped questioning, never settled on a single conclusion, never claimed to have all the answers. Instead, his life was one of constant evolution. He moved from literature to philosophy, from aristocracy to simplicity, from skepticism to faith. He repeatedly redefined his beliefs, adapting as he grew. This challenges us to reconsider our own approach to meaning. Many of us crave certainty, one absolute truth that will erase all doubt and give us peace. But Tolstoy's journey suggests that meaning isn't something we arrive at. It's something we experience, something we engage with throughout our lives. It's not about finding a final answer. It's about continuing to seek, question, and grow. 2. Meaning is something we create, not something we find. Tolstoy began his search looking for an external answer, some ultimate truth that would explain existence. He sought it in literature, philosophy, and science. But in the end, meaning wasn't something he discovered, it was something he chose. He realized that no logical argument could definitively prove life's purpose. Instead, he found meaning in his commitment to faith, to family, to living simply, and to serving others. This is a difficult but liberating realization. Meaning isn't waiting to be uncovered. It's something we actively build through our actions, relationships, and beliefs. Each of us has the power to shape our own sense of purpose. We don't need to wait for a perfect answer. We don't need everything figured out before we start living fully. We can choose to find meaning in love, in creativity, in kindness, in connection. Tolstoy chose his meaning, and we can choose ours. 3. Even the greatest minds struggle with meaning, and that's okay. Tolstoy, one of the most brilliant thinkers of all time, wrestled with doubt until his final days. He never reached a state of complete certainty or peace. But his life was not a failure. It was proof of the courage it takes to ask life's hardest questions, even when the answers remain elusive. So if you've ever felt lost, if you've ever questioned your purpose, know that you are not alone. You are in the company of one of the greatest minds who ever lived, but the difference between despair and purpose is not the absence of questions, it's what we do with them. Tolstoy chose to live his questions, to embrace them, to let them shape him, rather than paralyze him. And so can we. A final question for you. As we close this journey, I leave you with one final thought. What meaning are you choosing to create? Because in the end, the meaning of life is not something given to you, it's something you must claim for yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that is the most powerful answer of all. Thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on the notifications to stay updated. Goodbye.